All right, now we're going to move on to the nuts and bolts of resume writing itself. All right. Eileen and I often recommend that our students approach each activity, which is a part of their resume, from this basic structure. We encourage students to first think about their role. Remember, we talked about being the action hero in all your activities. Being the action hero in some activities may entail simply being a member, or in some cases, being the president of a club, a fundraiser, or perhaps editor in chief of a newspaper. Then we ask students to move on to the club, group, or activity, things such as drama club, maybe varsity soccer. Then we also encourage students to list a location. If it's a part of your high school, if it's, for example, varsity soccer, then you might want to list Bethesda Chevy Chase High School. If it's something different where it's sort of a non-high school event, you might want to also list the location of that. There are students who do things outside of school that are maybe farther away from home. For example, an internship in New York City instead of in Washington, D.C. Lastly, it's also really important to put in the time frame. You want admissions folks to make sure that they understand the amount of time and effort that you've given to this activity. That's why you use time frame. It helps to show that kind of effort. So here we have an example, back to our performing arts student who happens to be an actor, and they're working at Imagination Stage, which is, of course, located in Bethesda, Maryland, and they did this throughout the summer of 2009.
The most effective way to communicate your commitment and role in various activities is by bullet points. Please avoid using I, such as I did this or I participated in that. You want to use strong action words, strong verbs. Managed 50 screaming 4-year-olds at Camp Alcatraz. Wrote manifesto for director of think tank. Focus on your role and involvement. More often than not, the group or organization is widely known. And if not, a short description is acceptable. You don't want to go on endlessly. You don't want admissions folks saying in their heads, blah, 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 blah. Keep it short and sweet.
Here we have an example of an activity that is in fact widely known, just as Eileen described. This student has attempted to explain this activity and further her role in it, but in that effort has unfortunately departed from the one-stop shopping of resume writing. So, for example, she does use a whole bullet to describe an activity that's widely known. Again, this just can be much, much better articulated.
Now here's the corrected version. Note that it is concise, uses strong verbs, is much easier to read, and it's to the point. You understand what the student did without all the verbiage, and it's much better.
Finally, we wanted to just go over a couple common mistakes that sometimes students will make. For one, you want to remember that the theory of resume making is that of one-stop shopping. You want to make sure that an admissions officer can read through your resume and gain some sort of contextual information about what you've been up to outside of going to school every day. Please avoid too much information. Also, it's important to make your resume in chronological order, starting with those things that are happening now, from present, all the way back to those things that have occurred in ninth grade. It's also important, as Eileen noted earlier, to talk a little bit about those things that are most important to you first, moving on to those things that are least important to you. Also, make sure it's clear. This is an aesthetic exercise. This is a piece of paper that draws someone's eyes towards certain activities. Use your positive and negative space well, and avoid formatting things strangely.
One of the things we do in our educational counseling office is to help seniors edit their resumes, but it's not the only thing that we do. We also give direction to freshmen, sophomores, and juniors about activities that might be a good fit for them. Students who are hoping to become more involved, not simply for resume building, but to get the most out of their high school experiences, which ultimately is the best way to plan for college. Thank you so much for joining us for this evening's webinar. Stay on the line because we have received a few really great questions which we'll address in just a moment.